Yes, what's happening, people? What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another pre-match preview and match prediction or lineup prediction, I should say, for the North London Derby. It's another big one, the big one, the ultimate big one, if you're an Arsenal fan. Tottenham Hotspur versus Arsenal coming up for you guys on Sunday. Confirm the date with that one. What date is that? Sunday, the 22nd. Wow, already. Sunday, February 22nd. Is that right? That is right. Sunday, February 22nd. The games are coming thick and fast. The North London Derby is the next game that we have ahead of us in our chase for the Premier League title. Now, this match preview is coming to you a couple days after our result against Wolves, the draw 2-2 at Molineux. Um, And I mean, after having calmed down a little bit myself, obviously our immediate reaction as a fan base after that Wolves result is, title over and, Premier League title race is over and, cities to lose now and which some of that can still reign true, to be fair. However, we do have to stick, whatever our predictions are or our opinions are on how the season is going to end ultimately in terms of who wins it in the end. Your opinion may have changed. I know I've had an alteration and an alternative opinion, I should say, after that Wolves result. And I mean, us fans were reactionary sometimes, and we can be. We're entitled to be based on what we've seen from our team, based on what we've seen in the past, in recent history. You know what I mean? And talk in terms of the last 2 or 3 seasons where we've been in this position. History tends to repeat itself. But again, hopefully not. From a less emotional standpoint and a more sort of positive and forward-thinking standpoint, we got to stick by the team. There are still, 11 games to play at this moment in time, so we got to stick by the guys and hope they can do the business. That's what we do as fans, man. All we can do is hope and support and pray. So that's what we're gonna have to do. I'm gonna try my best as well to be positive and think forward. And I think this game couldn't come at a better time. I mean, the next game in the Premier League, you always want to come around quickly after a poor result like the one we just had against Wolves. So yeah, man, that's where we're at. We have a big game where we can put our wrongs to right, to be honest with you. And in the North London Derbies, where the players and the manager can go win some of the, and if not most of the fans back on side, back on board, back believing again. So again, it's your boy CJ. Welcome back along to the match preview, pre-game predicted lineups. Um, and we're gonna get into it, straight from the hip, as they say, and this is also off the back of Mikel Arteta having done his post game, sorry, pre-game press conference as well. So a bit of team news, but yeah, we'll get into it. Stay locked in with us here at the Gunners Corner. Um, so yeah, man, without further ado, as I always say, let's dive straight into what we think we're gonna do here in terms of a starting 11. No more waffling from me, straight to the point, straight to business, ladies and gents. And with that being said, we're frustrated with our goalkeeper at the moment. He's been showing some erratic nature at the moment, some uncharacteristic things. Has David Raya in the last few weeks, last few Premier League games, which maybe, that those nerves are spreading across the team to even our most dependable of players. But with regards to the goalkeeping situation, a lot of us again reactionary, maybe calling for him to be dropped. I think the more I look back on that last game, the 2-2 draw against Wolves, and the second goal we concede, the more I look at it, the more I think that is solely David Raya's fault. Now, maybe that's me being, protecting my center backs union, um, and Gabriel, and saying, dismissing him of the fault and leaving most, if not all, that fault to David Raya. I do think it's justified, as a goalkeeper in that situation. If you come out like that and you don't get it, um, you're leaving yourself in trouble and exposure whenever a goalkeeper comes brave off their line to collect and they don't collect. And the end result is what it was. There's going to be question marks about the goalkeeping. Gabriel was there, had the ball, in his sights, dealt with it, can deal with the header. no problem. There was really no need per se for Raya to come. And if you're going to come, you got to get there. So, anyways, I think it was a shocking error, but again, that's in the past. We'll let that be. But again, it's just something, and I mentioned in the last post-game player ratings from that match that David Raya has done, a couple shaky, erratic um, things of late. Whether it's quick distributions when he catches the ball out of the sky and giving the ball away and not sort of thinking properly about his distribution and just kind of quickly wanting to release it when we're under pressure, or just again like that second goal we conceded against Wolves. That was kind of the exclamation point in how he's been sort of performing the last few weeks. So he needs to go back to calming down and just easing the pressure and the stress off of the back line and off the team, and just sort of give us that calm, composed nature that he's brought since he's been here so far. He needs to go back to that sort of David Raya, because right now he's giving a bit of those Ramsdale vibes, those chaos, um, happy-go-lucky sort of erratic moments. So, um, yeah, David Raya, calm down. This is the North London Derby, but we're gonna keep you in goal for this one. And this is also based on what we think Arteta's gonna do, and Arteta's not gonna drop him. Let's be real. So let's keep David Raya in there, keep the faith. Oof, right back. Now, it's funny, and it may even sound hypocritical for this, right? There's been many calls for, coming from myself as well, for Timber to be dropped because he looks fatigued, he looks tired. And he had probably his worst game I've seen in a long time from him against Wolves. Um, but look, um, Ben White against Wigan in the FA Cup had to come off towards the end of that game due to fatigue. Now, zooming out, bigger picture is Ben White should have been getting more minutes over the course of the season thus far, and to give Timber more of a rest so that Ben White isn't coming out with fatigue in games against Wolves in the FA Cup fifth round or whatever it is. Um, But to now, sort of take Timber out of the limelight to put Ben White in a feisty North London derby away from home, when again he was struggling to last the 90 minutes against Wolves in the FA Cup when we were 4-0 up. Um, now might not be the best time to bring Ben White in out of the cold like that in a feisty game. If you were going to bring Ben White in, maybe you should have brought Ben White in against Wolves. You know what I mean? But again, now to try and throw him into the Lions Den at the North London Derby from the start, when he's clearly maybe macking lat sharpness, that might not be the best idea. So you're gonna have to persist with Timber, and I think what you're gonna see, just kind of throwing it out there ahead of time, what you're gonna see with my lineup prediction, again also based on what Mikel Arteta is gonna do, in my opinion, is gonna be going back to the tried and trusted, right? And you'll see that throughout my predicted lineup. And with Urian Timber, it's definitely a case of the tried and trusted. He's been there, done it. Is he fatigued? Whatever. I mean, he also shouldn't be, because he's been getting a lot of rest in, like, domestic cup competitions. He hasn't been playing. He didn't get in the match day squad, or didn't play against Wigan last weekend in the FA Cup. So theoretically, man, he should be okay to carry on. We have a week break, I think, after this Spurs game until we play Chelsea. So you got to persist with Timber in this one. I think tried and trusted, reliable for the most part. Maybe in a bit of bad form, but what better way to get yourself back into form? So Timber stays at right back for now for this game. Gabriel and Saliba, not horrible of late, um, but definitely need to step up a little bit more. I think Saliba's been a little bit. He's been showing a little bit of nerves too. Um, uncharacteristic mistakes from him, getting too tight to his man and getting spun, and then having to, pull jerseys or foul a little bit. I noticed Saliba's been doing that the last few games, against Sunderland strikers, and he struggled a little bit with Brobbey. Wolves, their big center forward they had last game, even him, he was troubling Saliba down the channels a little bit. So I think Saliba himself has to go back to getting a little bit more composed and calm, on the ball and off the ball, and his defending and positioning. But you're gonna need him and trust him for this game. And Saliba has to stay at center back for me in this game against Spurs. And I think literally the same could be same with Gabriel. Whilst I don't think at least none of them are directly at fault for the two goals per se against Wolves, we still need them to, along with David Raya, just give us that stability, that communication, that trust, that presence at the back to give the rest of the team confidence, because they are the platform that helps us build on and off the ball. Left back, Nketiah should keep his place. Absolutely. A goal and an assist in his last two games. He's starting to come into a bit of form at a time where, the results as a team haven't been greatest in the Premier League, two draws in a row. Hincapié, at least I think, can come out with his head held high for the most part in the last two games. Like I said, assist against Brentford, goal against Wolves, well taken. And he's got a feisty character and you trust him in a derby game like this, to be able to get sort of show that passion and that South American spirit. Um, so yeah, man, Hincapié keeps his place at left back. I have no problems with that. In midfield, we'll start with Zubimendi. I mean, similar to the Timber situation for me, in the sense that um, he's played heavy minutes and there's calls for rotation there. But again, maybe now this is not the time to rotate. If you're going to rotate, rotate against Wolves. But again, in the North London Derby, right? Are you going to play Norgard now, who's played, I think, something like 30 plus minutes in the Premier League so far this season? Now you're going to throw Norgard in from the start against Spurs in the Derby in a feisty, quick, tempoed, intense Derby. Like, not saying he can't do it, Norgard, but I don't think this is the time for that sort of rotation. So you're going to have to persist now with Zubimendi, and he's going to have to step up again. We're looking at you, Zubimendi, big game player, played in finals for your country, um, relatively experienced at the stage of his career, Spanish international. We're going to need him, and these players who haven't been showing great form of late, like I said, your Timbers, even the center backs, as I mentioned, in Saliba's case, Zubimendi. Um, you're gonna have to step up back to the level that we know you can. Maybe in Zubimendi's case, whilst he hasn't been extremely poor, um, the games have just seemed that they've been passing him by. But if you're that guy, if you're that player, if you're him, we need you to start taking the game by the scruff of the neck. And we're gonna need his control and presence in this game, Zubimendi. So keep him in there alongside Declan Rice. I think that goes without saying. Another player that we need to step up. We're talking about Ballon d'Or potential conversations for Declan Rice in the future. These are the kind of games where your big players, who are going to win you the big titles and want to be heroes and legends at this club. And in the game, generally, you got to step up. And we look at Declan Rice as one of those guys who has the potential to do all that. So big game for you, Deckers. Didn't think he was particularly great last game, despite the fact that he got an assist. But we are looking at you, Declan Rice. You shout, you try and lead on the pitch, but lead through your actions as well, and lead by example as a player, and dominate that midfield. We're going to need it. So those two stay in there. I'm going to skip the number 10 position for now, and we'll come back to that one in the end, similar to what I did last match preview, because there's interesting thoughts around that. Um, the left wing, go back to the tried and trusted. I'm going to say for both wings quickly right now. Left and right wing. Leandro Trossard on the left, Bukayo Saka on the right. Tried and trusted. Those were our two wingers that have held it down for a large part of the season, and we're in the positions that we're in all four comps, largely due to them. Obviously, Leandro Trossard started the season really well, um, and he just tailed off a little bit in terms of his GA and his output of late. But again, his contributions thus far to this point in the season, especially in the first half, have helped us get crucial points in games and help us got where we're at. So Leandro Trossard starts on that left wing for me. Back to like I said, the tried and trusted. At this moment, I do not trust Martinelli, and I still stand by that. My sort of slander for him um, after in the post game play ratings um, against Wolves, my slander for him, I still stand by that. That part certainly was not reactionary or emotional. I'm going to still stand on the fact that Martinelli should not be a starting left winger for a team looking to win the Premier League. And we've had him for a number of years now. Have not seen that progression again. Certainly not in the Premier League. If he wants to be a squad player, or a mid-table starter for another club who's in mid-table year in year out in the Premier League, sure. But for the likes of Arsenal Football Club, who's chasing, the greatest honors in the game, Martinelli is not your main guy week in, week out. There's no more room for sentiment for me and emotion and love and he's such a he's a young player, bought him young and he's grown with us, bun all that for me. Straight. He's not shown a good enough level up to this point. He has not shown he's improved much in his game, in my opinion, since he was a teenager at this club. So it's harsh, it's the reality, but that's the real world in general, right? So for me, Martinelli, your main role from here on out should be holding bench, unless we're playing Mansfield in the FA Cup, which we are in a couple weeks. Then you can start games. But In the run-in now, crucial games, Champions Leagues, Cup Finals, Martinelli hold bench. Trossard starts on that left wing. And there's an argument to say that come the summer again, we haven't addressed our left wing for a while now, and I think finally this summer we should look for a long-term, permanent, full-time, proper solution on that left wing. It shouldn't be Leo or Martinelli going into the next season, but that's for another day. As of the here right now, the here and now, Leandro Trossard starts on the left wing. Bukayo Saka starts on the right wing. Again, go back to the tried and trusted, something that's been working for us all season, most of the season, and most of, the last few years. Saka's been there in the trenches with us, internationally, at club level. He's the guy. He's been talked about, and hyped up as one of the best wingers in the world over the last couple of years. That's the status he's set for himself, in terms of performance levels, and just giving him a big contract, right? I believe 300K a week, 5-year deal. We're all happy with that. But now you got to show it. Now you got to repay the faith the club has put into you and the fans have put into you, Bukayo, and big game. You do usually turn up in the derby, and we're gonna need you to turn up once more in this one. So, yeah, Bukayo Saka on that right wing. No more experiments in the 10, and then Nani out wide. Not for me. Nani's gonna should hold bench. Big player Saka in your main position on the right wing. Go and carry us to the 3 points in this game and do the business, man. Fresh off that big time contract, then show up in a big time game for us and get us over the line. Up top, Victor Gyökeres, again, Jesus, similar to Gabriel Martinelli, is another player winding me up. You saw Jesus a little bit lose his head. At the end of the last game when he pushed Wolves' defender Mosquera over, and I think that was a little bit of revenge for how Mosquera assaulted him at the Emirates last season. Um, yeah, but Jesus, at a time where we need a guy like him who actually has experience of winning the Prem to be level-headed and calm and show us something, some composure. He hasn't really shown that for me in the last few weeks. Both on and off the pitch, right? Obviously, the after antics and then getting involved with the opposition players and getting involved with the referee and going down too easily, looking for penalties. He's acting a little bit, he's looking a little bit youthful and immature in his approach play to the game at the moment. Stay on your feet, stay on side. Even, he's not even in positions where he's supposed to be as a number nine, like kind of all over the place, Jesus. And I think he epitomizes the pressure that we're all feeling at the moment, which is strange because he is the one experienced figurehead who's won the league multiple times in this team. So, no, Jesus doesn't start in this team at the moment either for me. So you got to persist with Victor Gyökeres and keep trying to get the best out of him. We brought him in for a reason as a gunman goal scoring striker. And we just got to get the best out of him and continue to try with the money that we spent and the reputation he has. No point giving up now, right? The season's not even over yet, so persist with him. I know he's not playing the greatest or easy on the eye, but you got to persist with him. Um, so Gyökeres starts up top, and I think having the likes of ball players around him, as opposed to the sprinters like the Noni Maduekes and Martinellis, they don't link up as well. Especially Martinelli, I don't think links up as well with Gyökeres. Certainly not from the start. Yes, we've seen that late impact off the bench with those two coming on and getting us an extra goal or two on the break when teams are trying to get back into a game. But from the start, I just don't see, Martinelli doesn't have enough of the footballing brain or the IQ to link up well with a Gyökeres, who already himself, doesn't have the best footballing IQ, so to speak. He's a flat track bully, Gyökeres. Let's be honest. He's not an Aguero type striker or even a Suarez type striker or somebody who's just going to be able to, has that intelligence, pick up the ball in certain pockets and areas and then carry it or run with it or make a play. We know what Gyökeres is. And so you need guys around him who can get the ball to him quickly and feed him. And that's the likes of Trossard and Saka. And my number 10, who I've thought long and hard about, but I'm now going to stick with this thought process. I think and also what I think Mikel Arteta should do, and I think will maybe do in the end, and I'd be disappointed if he doesn't. But that player for that number 10 position, to start at least, is Eberechi Eze. Some would say harshly dropped last game after the performance against Wigan, was dropped against Wolves off the back of, a couple assists against Wigan and getting on the ball. And, players like Eze, you got to kind of put your arm around and show confidence in him. He's a confidence player, and in basketball terms, feed him while he's hot, give him the rock while he's hot. Give him the rock, meaning, play him, keep him in good rhythm, get him on the ball, show that confidence in him. and specifically with the game that this is, he scored a hat trick in the North London Derby at the Emirates earlier this season. So, maybe, sometimes players really stand up against certain opposition, and this could be a big one for him to, get back his form, his confidence, um, going into the business end of the season. We're gonna need him to step up again as a man. Again, big player with big money and big money signing, big reputation, big intro video, let it all work out with Ian Wright and all that stuff, man. As a turn up, man, it's your time. That's what I'd be saying. I'd be trying to really pump him up and motivate him for this game. So as a guy who can feed the likes of Gyökeres and plays the ball forward and can get on the ball, we may need that because Spurs may set up and try and clog the midfield and keep it tight and maybe congest certain areas. So we may need some moments of magic and balls through the lines to open them up. So I would be playing Eze from the start, man, and I hope Arteta does that. And I think, a lot of my prediction is also based on the fact that I'm not sure um, how fit these couple other players are. Now, going into the press conference quickly in the team news, whilst Arteta doesn't give much away, he did admit that there is no fresh injury concerns up to this point at the time of recording for players post Wolves. He did also admit that the likes of Trossard is going to be fine, which is good. But also crucially, Odegaard and Kai Havertz. He mentioned that the two of them are going to be likely possibly back for selection. I don't think either of those two would be fit enough to start per se, especially again with the intensity and the feistiness and the nature of the North London Derby. From the start, I'm not sure Arteta would risk them, although we could see a curveball. That's the beauty of what he does when he puts out the lineups. Come game day, we see the lineup, and sometimes there's something we completely didn't even expect, but I don't expect those two to start. But stranger things have happened. Yes, if they're fully fit and in flow, there could be a case for either of them to start Kai Havertz or Odegaard in behind the Gyökeres, but I don't expect them to. So therefore, it's next man up. And like I said, it's Eze. No more Saka experiment in the 10. I think you got to get your sort of best players out there in their right positions to help us get over the line in such a big game of such big high stakes. So yeah, Havertz and Odegaard, if hopefully they are going to be on the bench because that'll help us. I think our squad will help us and come will make a difference in this game. So those two on the bench, if they're returning, will be crucial. Havertz and Odegaard. Um, as Arteta said, as he always does say, we have, sort of one more training session, or we'll know a little bit more tomorrow or the next day, which is, 24 hours essentially before the game. We'll know a little bit more, but he did sound optimistic that both the likes of Odegaard and Havertz could be in the squad for selection for the Derby. But again, in the 10 to start to sort of round off my starting 11, it's Eberechi Eze. So once again, going through the full lineup, David Raya goal, Timber right back, Saliba Gabriel center backs, and Capie left back. In midfield, Zubimendi and Declan Rice in the sort of number 10 position, Eze, Trossard on the left, Saka on the right, Gyökeres up top. That is more than good enough to get the job done. We need to bounce back despite our poor performance and result against Wolves. It's time to bounce back with a victory at the shithole at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Go and do the business over there against those lot. No excuses. We are the better team. Play the game. Try not to play the occasion as much. Listen, we play our football, we win the game, but will we? Will we play our football, right? And in our Arteta system, what does that even look like? But by hook or by crook, get the 3 points if you want to maintain this title race. And that's all there is to it, really. Ladies and gentlemen, continue to please follow us and support us in everything we're doing. We're putting out great content. I did put out a North London Derby special. With a special guest and friend of mine. So go check that out on the channel. Also, a recent podcast episode just dropped as well, with the usual podcast that we do for you guys twice a week with myself, Murdad, and Laurent. So go check that out as well. It's another good one. And we will continue to roll on. So please continue to like, share, and subscribe. Be here with us on this journey. We really do appreciate it as always. And until the next one, okay? Come on, you Gunners. Let's get it. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.